So I wanted to talk about this story that appeared in the Welsh BBC, not for what the story is, but for what it tells us about how politics in economic policy works. So the story in brief, it's a brewery, a local brewery in the Newport area that's announced the closure of its main Newport city centre pub. So that pub owners, according to the BBC, they said,
"We have worked tirelessly to keep the bar financially viable, but it has got to a point where we have had to make some difficult decisions to ensure the future of the business. Since the pandemic, Newport city centre has been slowly imploding, with retail and hospitality suffering the worst. Unfortunately, our tiny rebel bar on Newport High Street has been a casualty of these factors."
Now, the council response to that was more or less to deny it was happening. The council spokesman, again, according to the BBC, says,
"We do not recognise the description given of the city centre. Newport High Street is busier now than it has been for several years."
The thing I want to point out with this is, here are two stories. The one is the local council, which is denying that there's a problem, things are on the up, footfall is rising, we're looking forward to a bright future. On the other hand, we have the brewery that's saying, look, no, things are bad, they've been bad since the pandemic, things have been getting worse, we've tried to keep the pub open, we can't do it, we're closing. So you have to take the two of those stories, they're diametrically opposed to each other, and ask yourself which is correct. Now here's the problem with the council's view. Firstly, the council is going to be using data that was several months old. Probably when they're talking about footfall, they're talking about maybe the Christmas period, maybe the sales immediately after Christmas. So yeah, of course, footfall is going to be up. The problem with that, though, is that footfall doesn't necessarily mean sales. Lots of people might be out in the city centre taking a look round. I think a lot of people these days will go into the town centre, look at what they want to buy, then go and find it on Amazon or eBay. So it doesn't necessarily translate. So they're using a not a particularly good indicator, and it's backward looking. Now, when we come to the pub, there's a direct indicator that pub will know week to week, day to day, even how many customers came in, how much they spent, what they spent it on. So if they're saying that their experience is that town centre is slowly imploding, then I think we should give it more credence. Now I think, okay, Newport, it's a small area, actually quite a run-down area. Newport is featured in the Centre for Cities list of the poorest cities in the country for many, many years. What I think is interesting with this story is you can apply it at the national level, at the regional level. It applies to government across the board. That government in general uses backward-looking data. It very often denies bad news, usually because the politicians don't want to portray themselves in a bad light in front of the public. So that when the crisis happens, instead of responding appropriately at the time, you have to wait until things like the pub starts closing, like the shops get boarded up, like the economy implodes. And even then the politicians will come up with excuses rather than prescriptions. What are we going to do? Well, Newport are calling on the Welsh Government to improve business rates relief. Well, good luck with that, because the Welsh Government is skint and they're putting business rates up. So there's this point the finger of blame somewhere else. Don't blame us. It's not our fault. And anyway, things are going to turn out fine in the end. Meanwhile, real actual businesses that employ people that create wealth are going broke. But you're not going to find that out in the official data for another 3 months or so. And that's the problem with economic policy across the board, that by the time the bad news gets into the forefront of the decision maker's consciousness, it's already too late.